Cops mock a black man on trial, unaware that he's the head of the FBI. But before we dive into this incredible story, make sure you hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. You won't want to miss what happens next. It all began with a low, sharp chuckle, dismissive mocking. "Look at this guy," Officer Jensen whispered to his partner, nudging him as a tall black man in a sharp charcoal suit stepped into the courtroom. "Sad bet he's one of those smooth-talking public defenders. Probably thinks he can outwit the system," Jensen sneered. But the man didn't flinch. Not a glance in their direction. No sign of distress or surprise. He simply carried himself with quiet dignity, his posture straight, his steps calm and sure. He nodded respectfully toward the judge before taking a seat in the gallery, third row from the front. To the officers, he was just another face. Another black man entering a courtroom, nothing special, nothing noteworthy. They saw his skin before they saw anything else. And that right there? That was their first mistake. Outside the courtroom, the media was buzzing with coverage of the case. A young black college student, Darius Mitchell, had been arrested 2 months earlier on charges of resisting arrest and assaulting an officer. The body cam footage mysteriously disappeared. Witnesses? Their stories didn't line up. And yet, Officer Jensen and his partner, Burke, stood firm, insisting the young man had been aggressive, threatening, violent, even. The courtroom wasn't packed, but the air was thick with tension. It felt as if everyone in that room could sense it. Something was about to happen, something bigger than this trial. As the prosecution began laying out their case, the two officers sat smugly behind their attorney. Officer Burke kept glancing at the suited black man in the gallery, whispering to Jensen. Another stifled laugh. "What's he even doing here?" Burke sneered. "Probably some family member trying to look important," he scoffed. But they didn't notice the subtle exchange between the judge and the man in the suit. They didn't catch the respectful nods from court officers as he passed by. They didn't see the ADA pause, even briefly, registering him in the audience. The man didn't say a word. He simply observed, calm and composed. Darius sat quietly next to his public defender, his hands clasped tightly in his lap. He looked worn down, exhausted, not just physically but emotionally. You could see it in his eyes. The fight had been drained from him long before he even set foot in that courtroom. His mother sat behind him, her hands wringing together, muttering prayers as her fingers trembled in fear. The defense team presented their case. Darius had been walking home from a friend's apartment. He had his earbuds in and didn't hear the officers call out to him. When he finally turned around and saw them approaching, weapons holstered but their hands near them, he panicked, just like any young black man in America might. He raised his hands, shouted that he was unarmed, but they still tackled him and shoved him. "We feared for our safety," Officer Burke claimed from the stand, his voice dripping with false conviction. There were no bruises on either officer, no medical reports to back their story, just paper trails and the same tired old narrative too many have heard before. And then, the defense rested, and the judge called for a recess before the closing arguments. That's when the unexpected happened. The man in the suit rose to his feet. He walked forward, past the attorneys, past the stunned defendant, until he stood directly before the bench. "Your Honor," he said, his voice steady, smooth, and calm, "if I may address the court briefly." The judge sat up a little straighter, offering a small, knowing smile. "Of course, Director Hayes. You have the floor." A wave of confusion swept through the room. "Director? Hayes?" Officer Jensen stiffened in disbelief. "What the hell?" he muttered under his breath. The man turned slowly, addressing the courtroom. "My name is Malcolm Hayes. I am the director of the Federal Bureau of Investigation." Gasps echoed softly from the gallery. One woman even covered her mouth in surprise. Darius's mother nearly dropped her purse in shock. Hayes continued, his voice firm but measured. "I'm here today not as the head of a federal agency, but as a black man in America. I came here because I read this case file, and what I saw was a familiar story. I saw a young man criminalized simply because of his skin. I saw missing footage. I saw discrepancies in the accounts. And most of all, I saw two officers who failed to see the human being standing right in front of them. He locked eyes with Officers Jensen and Burke. I've been stopped too, he went on, his voice rising with intensity. I've been followed in stores. I've had guns drawn on me while I was jogging in my own neighborhood. The only difference between me and Darius Mitchell is the suit and the title I carry. A heavy silence filled the room. And I want everyone here to really think about what that means, he said. If the man you mocked today had been wearing a hoodie instead of a suit, you would have dismissed him entirely. And that's exactly what you did to Darius. Hayes turned to the judge. Your Honor, I will not interfere with your ruling. But I ask this court to consider the bigger picture, because this isn't just about one night. This is about a system that too often mistakes presence for guilt and skin for a threat. He paused for a moment, then turned back to Darius, his tone softening. You're not invisible, son. You matter. And you're not alone. The courtroom was deathly still. No one dared to laugh now. Officer Burke's jaw clenched. Jensen looked down at the courtroom tiles, his expression suddenly unreadable. The jury deliberated for less than 2 hours. The verdict? Not guilty. Outside, reporters swarmed the courthouse. The story was already going viral. FBI Director shocks courtroom during trial of black teen. Clips of his speech spread like wildfire across social media, faster than anchors could even narrate them. But Director Hayes didn't stick around for interviews. Instead, he found Darius and his mother standing outside, overwhelmed and unsure of what to say next. Thank you, sir, Darius said softly, his voice thick with emotion, tears welling in his eyes. You didn't have to do that. Yes, I did, Hayes replied, his gaze steady and sincere. Because one day, it'll be your turn to do this for someone else. That evening, Officer Jensen handed in his badge. He didn't say a word, just walked into the precinct, dropped it on the desk, and left. Officer Burke was placed on administrative leave pending review. The mayor's office had already issued a statement expressing deep concerns about systemic failures in the department. The following morning, Director Hayes returned to Washington. He sat at his desk, staring out the window at the Capitol, reflecting on the quiet battle he'd fought his entire life. The countless times he'd held his tongue, clenched his fists, and buried his rage. And for once, just this once, he hadn't stayed silent. Respect should never be judged by appearance. Justice should never be determined by titles, and the worth of a man should never be measured by the color of his skin. Not everyone in that courtroom left changed, but some did. And sometimes, that's enough to start something. In a world where judgment often precedes understanding, one man's presence was enough to shake a broken system to its core. If this story moved you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs to hear it. And until next time, remember, sometimes the quietest voices carry the loudest truths.